Welcome back to the conversation, the DMGB conversation, where the DMGB stands for doesn't matter, get better, because that's the philosophy that we live with. Circumstances don't matter. Environment doesn't matter. We have to find a way to get 1% better every day. And I am super excited to bring my next guest on because this is somebody that got brought into my world through social media and through networking, which is the best way to find people and bring them into your world. But then not only did we end up working together, but we became friends. And now we are part of a group of people that constantly push each other on a daily basis. And fingers crossed, we're about to close on a house with the Torisk team. So welcome to the conversation, Jeremy Torisk.
The crowd goes crazy. On speaker because there's no one allowed in the stadiums these days, but still, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to have you on, and I'm excited to share your journey with people. You are an entrepreneur. You are a grinder. You are a guy who came up through the work system to a leadership position and are constantly learning, trying to evolve. So I'm going to let you tell your story, but I'm super excited to share it with people. Tell us where you started, where you come from, and how you got to where you are.
Okay. So, yeah, you hear this a lot probably from your guests. It's hard to say these things in a short time, but we've been practicing, right? So, born in Hollywood, Florida, right here, a Florida native, and I was born into a pretty crazy, chaotic family. A lot of drug abuse, mental illness issues. And so at 7 years old, I became kind of the parental guardian, even of my parents, my bigger sister who's deaf. So it's 18 months older, but deaf, and then a 7-year younger brother. So I had a family of 4 to take care of young. And it helped in I think that step up ability, it just made me always step up whenever there was a chaotic situation. I kind of tend to flatten out right there in tears, which I'm thankful for. So
sure.
Because of that, though, education wasn't a thing. No college, didn't finish school, left the house at 16-ish, 17 years old. And I was on my own. I was better on my own.
Yep.
So I had a couple of friends that I kind of stayed around, kicked around their houses with. And then I met a girl, isn't that the way it always goes, who had a stepdad who offered up digging pits for the cable company, literally trench. And I jumped on it. Absolutely. Right after that, shortly after that, my self-esteem was pretty bad. There's some revelations that came to light.
Sure.
And it changed my mindset in a flick of a light. Just changed it 180 degrees.
Give us some insight into that. Yeah, give us some insight into what it was, what changed it, and where it went to.
Okay, so basically, I was, when you're in a drug-fueled party house, was basically what it was. No responsibility, no accountability. You just don't have any direction. They say kids need discipline. And that I had none. I was a good kid, but I had no ambition. I never went to school. If I did, I fell asleep. I had, narcoleptic almost, like just not interested. And just thought the best I could do was painting apartments for my friend's dad on the weekends, or, maybe driving a truck like my dad, maybe. That was my aspiration. So I thought then the family dynamic, we were treated poorly because of my house was like the black sheep of the bigger family. So we just felt put down a lot.
Sure.
Whether it was real or not, that's my perception. When I was 21 years old, I found out through a drunken phone call with my grandmother after my sister's wedding that my dad wasn't my dad. And
wow.
Because we're close, but not, again, it's a weird dichotomy of situation. So when I found that out, I was actually relieved. I was happy, elated, actually.
Sure. Because was it like a sense of freedom?
It was a sense of, it wasn't freedom yet. It was a sense of, I wasn't sentenced to follow that path. I still didn't have any tools to go anywhere. So I didn't know freedom yet. So gotcha. I just, it's like being born in prison and let out. You don't know what freedom is, but you're not in prison. All right.
Right.
Years goes by. I find out through a friend of a friend and mother aunt that I get a couple names. I follow through with it. I find out that my biological father was a lawyer at the time. And that resonated with me because now I had DNA with brain power, a couple of brain cells in me that
Sure.
were my birthright. Even though I never met the person to this day, it's that day changed my life. Finding out that I had a DNA of somebody with some intelligence gave me confidence. I always had bravado because I fought a lot. Imagine growing up in a survival neighborhood, fought every day.
Sure.
But I didn't have confidence, no self-esteem. I was jealous of the kids with low self-esteem. I had no self-esteem.
Yeah.
But in an instant, that mindset, and this is before internet, before I knew what influencer mentors were. I didn't know any of that. I was digging holes and doing installs. But from that day forward, I was 22, 23. I had never held a position for more than 8 months without getting promoted or without having massive responsibility heaved onto me and accepting it, of course. And I never stopped moving up. Just from that,
all because you knew that you could be something better because there was somebody in your life that represented that destination.
Yeah, that was it.
That's amazing because I think understanding your circumstances as an adult, I think a lot of self-help is built off of that, of trying to teach people that you don't have to choose to be a victim of your environment, of your circumstances. You can choose to fight out of it, but it's far harder than people that don't grow up in that kind of environment or circumstance, which really, it doesn't have to be your upbringing. It could be at any point in your life where you're in a bad situation. If you allow the environment and circumstances to dictate how you think and feel and what your vision is, it's going to crush you. But it's even 1,000 times harder for somebody who doesn't even know that the possibility exists because that's all you've ever seen in your life.
It is. Ever since that day, I read that notion. I've had conversations with people about it. I always said it's easier because I didn't know that I had it bad. When you're poor, you don't know you're poor, kind of thing. I mean, you know what I mean? You hear that a lot.
Sure.
So when that light switch flipped, it was easy for me to come up. But I had a dad who was a lawyer in my, but it's not as simple as that. It's a pretty ugly story, right? And you still use it to crutch and to blame and stuff. But people who are born with just a slighter sensibility or a propensity to maybe get depression and stuff, and I want to get into that a little bit with you. You and your cousin Scott have 2 shows this week that really blew my mind away. But back to the original is that Les Brown says if you get knocked down and you land on your back, you're still looking up, and if you could look up, you can get up. And if you've never really heard that, and if you've been in life and you get knocked down, people think because your back's on the canvas that you're out of the game. You're not. You got a 10 count. You up, brush yourself off. And what I say in the book, I'm writing a book about it called Labor to Leadership, how you kind of can go mindset changes everything. But it's you can write your own script, and scripts have many acts. First act, second act, third act. And so your past doesn't dictate your future, but it is responsible for making you strong to go ahead and face your future.
Yep. And that's an amazing thing to be able to understand. I think I wanted to, because you touched on something that I think is really important. You said, that changed me and it changed my vision and it allowed me to elevate out of the situation that I came from, but it's still hard. And there's that tendency to want to use where you came from as the crutch for why something is hard. And so how did you recognize that? Most people don't even recognize that they do that. They say, well, this is harder for me because of where I came from. That's a crutch. You're making an excuse for why it's harder and not just choosing to accept the reality that it's hard and then deciding to do whatever it takes to accomplish it anyway. How did you get there?
Well, because it's just my nature. I've always been the helper. My uncle Lewis was a contractor. And I mean, I remember building decks with him at 4 or 5 years old, handing him the nails. And I was cutting my grass, my auntie's grass, my grandmother's grass at 7, 8, 9 years old. I was the doer, and it wasn't because I like work. It was because of these, right? Because
Yeah.
I had rage and like I said, no self-esteem. You're always looking for the thank you, good job. So I was always a mover and a shuffler and a hustler without knowing why, but it's always been in my DNA. I'm like a shark. I just can't stop moving.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as just knowing, you don't really know it, and later it makes sense when you figure things out and you look back and reflect. But at the time, what I think that people do is just like your show is called "Don't Matter, Get Better." These people I have many close people to me. I say these people, I'm thinking specifically of my life, who just find it easier to just keep the status quo.
Sure.
Guess what? Happiness, you can't define it, right? So if they're in that situation and it's just not, they don't want to put the discipline in and the time to make themselves get up earlier, read the book, meditate, reflect, put themselves out there, get rejected, get failure. I'm a huge fan of failure. I love failure. If you're not failing, you're not trying.
Yep.
So, failure is huge. People don't like to experience it. It's just easier. They don't have the discipline.
Sure. So where did your career go, I guess, from there? So like to me, I know you as the entrepreneur, your hands are in a lot of different things. You're a leader of a very large company and you oversee teams of people. How did this helper, right, who doesn't really know anything other than helping and looking for that praise, who gets the vision that I can be better than what I've come from, where did it go from there?
It was very organic. I just always, since I was in the cable world at the ditch digger level, and the next one was installer, then service, then maintenance. Then I got asked to join a company as an installer. So now is my first run at a corporate kind of surrounding, and I kind of dug it because I had some cool people who were supervisors there, and they helped me learn what corporate structure is. And your show is kind of short, and I love that, but I could go on for hours talking about structure because I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17, early enlistment, because I needed it, but I didn't end up going because I had a GED, and you needed 15 college credits. So when I got into corporate structure, it really suited me. So then I really started flying up the corporate ladder there from supervisor or maintenance to the special team that was like a hitman squad of splicing for upgrades. Mm-hmm. And they were a special group of guys. Pompano, we did all of Broward County really back in the 90s, splicing all this hardline cable. And then they were hiring for a supervisor of that team. And I was the newest guy. These guys were lifers in this cable system, 15-year cable guys. I was there like a year.
Yep.
And I got the position. I didn't really even apply. I take that back. I did apply for that one. I applied.
Gotcha.
And I got it. And now these guys, that was a tough transition because they did not like me. I wasn't I was a guy. They were that mindset again. Come in, punch in, work 8 hours, punch out. Not me. God, let's go, boys. Let's go get this place. We got that. I was doing 21, taps. I had to learn. There was a curve there. And it just
it's interesting. It's interesting to hear you talk about it because your environment as a kid kind of gave you a perspective and kept you in this place. But then your environment in your first corporate job, the people that were around you, they helped elevate you quicker. People don't realize, and I talk about this all the time. Most leaders think that they're in the position they're in because of what they've done for their entire career. And it's really not that way at all. It's really all about what everybody else around them have done to help them get to where they are. And if the leaders who get to that point don't have that vision are usually the ones who don't create a good culture around them because it's self-centered.
Yeah, and it's always the case where you have the two cartoon guys, the guy sitting behind the desk and the guys are pulling the desk, and the other
Yeah.
one who's in the front of the pack.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I did. I've done everything in the cable industry. I didn't get that job after a year. I got it after, in the industry, my first supervisor
Sure.
job. So I was a contractor and in-house and an installer and a splicer and a fiber and then I did it all. I was hurt. I
Yep.
cut my hand. I was in dispatch for 6 months. I had no
Yep.
dispatch, and I knew how to get the calls. I knew it was too much for people. And so it's that experience that go through a wall for you, and I expect you to go through a wall for me. And when you believe that, the walls will be broken when the people
Yep.
believe it.
That's
So
awesome. Because the leadership tool there is. So how did you get to that point? So I think, you get to a management position, or I hate that term, actually. Back that up. You get to a leadership position, right, with a bunch of guys who aren't on the same wavelength that you are. You're in this growth mentality. You're in this, I can't do enough.
Yeah.
Now you've got to lead this group of guys. How did you do that?
So, it's funny. It kills me. I get goosebumps right now. Life is so great. What makes me so happy, man. At that point, we had going through a huge transition. All the cable companies were eating each other up. I was Pompano is American Cable, then Media One, then AT&T Broadband. At that point, we were AT&T Broadband. Comcast bought us. Right when I was getting into my really big, I had another promotion to manager because I was supervisor. Then I got regional manager of construction, all of Dade County and all of the Florida Keys. $80 million budget, 140 contractors, 27 employees, and I had no tool. Comcast bought us. Guess who my boss was? Your dad mentioned him today on the call.
Philemon Lopez. That's amazing.
So I get Philemon stepping into my life, and Comcast has this leading the broadband way, and they send me to Philadelphia, corporate, structured training and HR. Yeah. And then that's when I got to learn all my Feely soft buttons. I got to change my whole verbiage and language. Lexicon was and so Philemon Lopez was a very big influence. Now, I didn't direct report to him. I had Gary Kaufman in between us, but Philemon's very hands-on. And Philemon brought in like Phil Riley to talk to us one time, and Lonzo Mourning, and he's a huge guy of motivation. He's a photographer, so he used to show all his pictures at every meeting, and he's a fantastic friend. But that guy really started opening my eyes. A guy named Nestor Martin, who was there, and he a real mentor. He's the one who used to come and sit in my office and shut the door and really give me my my life lessons as a leader, because I was not good at it, but I had good intention. I had the drive. I was first in, last to leave. I still do that.
Yep.
So Philemon, it's so funny you mentioned that.
Pause there for a second, because you had the want to. What were you missing? What was the tool or the skill set that you were missing that wasn't making you a good leader, that you identified, were able to fix, and moved on from there?
Well, it was examples. I had 0 examples in my life of what responsibility was. So when I started getting in where Philemon started sending us to training, and then we got bosses like Gary Kaufman, and when Martin was over me, John McPhail, these people who were much, been in leadership positions for 20 years at that time. And I saw, that's how that person acts in that role. And so I never had examples. I'm a great mocker. The drumming is mocking, right? You hear it, you do. Dancing, I'm not saying I'm the best dancer, but I could dance a lot. I can good because I see and I do. Martial arts, really good. American Kempo, we do. Jiu-jitsu, because it's just mocking imitation. It's a movement action.
Yep.
Now you've got YouTube, and the influences are at your fingertips all day long. If you could just stop listening to the bad crap and turn on your YouTube and put on something motivational, you'll never turn around.
Yep. That's so. And talk to me about that. How, okay, now you've got your examples. What are the influences that you're putting in that continue to develop you as a leader and person. I mean, you talked a little bit about my show with Annie, Annie's turnaround and her vulnerability and what she talked about in mental health. Obviously, the inputs are critical when you have mental health issues because you struggle internally with your thoughts. So you have to actively put things in to help correct that. Talk to me about some of that.
So her and on your show and Scott Garber, Checkpoint episode 8, Eric Cousin, just this week, he talked about mental illness. He helps sales teams at Florida Panthers. Had a condition where he's in bed for 2 years, where he wouldn't even turn the TV on, didn't want to eat. Annie admitting that her depression diagnosis was actually a bipolar stage of.
Yeah.
So with my mental illness history, I'm very, very manic. So I had a really hard time of letting go. So I've got 40 people working for me, 27 employees, whatever, 40 contractors, and they all have people out there, hundreds of people in your organization. I would still do all the dailies for everyone. I would still, I was just too hands-on. I couldn't relinquish that. And when somebody didn't do their job, my past, not knowing, because I know I'm impacted from some pretty bad stuff that happened when I was a kid. I took it personally. When someone didn't do their job, I took it personally, and I would get enraged and I would scream and throw things. And I can't believe I didn't get fired 10,000 times. So
HR was way different back then.
Way different. I did get written up once by my boss, Nestor, for an HR lady, but I thought I could vent to you. No, not totally. So it wasn't that bad. But the thing is that I just wouldn't. I got a lot of good response because I always did, and they respected that. But then I also overdid, and I wouldn't let them do. So over time, I started learning how to delegate, and that has gone a long way. Now I had to delegate and learn how to propagate. All right, I'm going to let you do it, but now I'm going to cheer you on. I'm going to be your cheerleader, and I'm going to show you how to do it with my words, because I'm a decentralized management system. We have 9 offices in the country and in the Caribbean. I can't be there with them anymore. So I could never run this organization if I didn't learn those lessons when I did locally, when I had the chance to do that with a big team locally. That was the hardest thing, is pushing that control and not taking it personal when it didn't
so
go my way.
That's the ultimate thing that I think leaders don't understand, is that it's no longer, and especially because in most organizations, you get promoted to leadership because you were very good at doing the job that you were in. But when you move to a leadership position of that job, it's no longer your responsibility to do that job the way you did it. It's your job to coach everybody else how to do the job the way you did it and help them do it the way you did. And most people completely miss that. So they end up burning themselves out because they don't understand how to communicate to people, to teach the process, to teach the fundamentals, because they might not have even created it themselves. They might have just done it. And because they knew what to do, they never understood how to put it into a process to teach it to somebody else, which we talk about that in sports, is not every great player makes a great coach. Just because they were good at doing it doesn't mean that they're going to be good at coaching it. So how did you get to a point where you were creating process? Where did you see process? How did that kind of transpire for you?
So that's actually was really why I did my job so well, is I always had very good processes. I used to get rid of a lot of inefficiencies, and then rinse, wash, repeat when it worked. And that was all behind the scenes. I never tried to kick it upstream to show people what I do, because I was liked. My attitude was very strong and like, this would just be another reason for them to say something negative. So I just kept it to myself, but it helped. That's why I was promoted too. And then I started implementing these processes, and over time, they really have become the backbone of the company that I own now. I'm a minority owner of the company, like you said, all over the place. But what happens is the process is nothing without the proper motivation to follow the process, and without their input. Even though you created it, you have to have that open door, constant feedback of, we need to change this. This would work better. That would look better. And because it might look better in your system, it doesn't work over here. It doesn't mean you can't have some flexibility. So you need to be flexible. Also, Wes Parsons was my coworker back at Comcast. We were actually like going for the same job. We were kind of adversaries. Turned out we'd work together later. He became my boss. And let me tell you something. What happens is you go from a checkers player, which is when you're working and creating those processes, to a chess player, and you start using tactical strategy. And Wes is like a 3D chess player. Like he's
Yeah.
I've been with him as a direct report now for 5 or 6 years. And he made me a partner in the company that we own now. He's just the guy you can call on the phone and tell him about a problem, and you've been mulling it over for 4 hours. He'll solve it in 10 minutes. But here's the problem. I got another guy, Benny Azud, back in Saveology days. You have to take your problems to your boss. You can't just tell him the good stuff. Your boss isn't there to tell you how good you are whenever something goes right. Your boss is there to help you get over the bad stuff when things go wrong. Because I've done it, I've seen it, and I have another person I can bring in. So you have to be willing as a worker, employee, participant to bring to your upstream the stuff that's going wrong. But here's the catch, and what you think the solution could be, because you're Johnny on the spot. You probably have a better feel of a solution. From there, you tweak it. So you don't want a yes man team around you, but you don't want naysayer either. You got to develop that, that
But to preach that as a culture, you then as a leader have to be willing to accept people's feedback. I've been in a lot of situations where the authority figure, and I don't like to call them leaders because they weren't leaders, would say, I've got no problem hearing whatever issues you guys have. Just come to me with a solution. So you would do that. Here's the problem. The solution that I propose. Well, that's not going to work. We should do it my way, was the answer to every single time you do that. So that's not, because as soon as you do that to somebody, they go, he's full of shit. I'm never bringing another problem to him, because he doesn't really want to hear it. It's just higher.
He broke the trust. Exactly.
Well, this is awesome. This is I'm really thankful that you came on. First of all, I'm thankful that you've been brought into my life. I'm thankful for the things we've done together, the way we've traded business back and forth, the way we continue to help each other. I'm very thankful that you're a Noodleberg Daily Huddle DOT, that you're there every morning. And I appreciate you so much. And I really appreciate you sharing your story today, because I know that you're a extremely good leader within your organization and the people that you work with. And for the leaders that are listening to this show, there's so much to be learned from understanding the value of communication, the value of process, and willing to make it fit every person. Your process has to fit the people that you're leading. I think if that's the takeaway from this show, people can take this and spread this like wildfire, because that's the real, that's what makes you great as a leader.
And there's always room to get better, and it doesn't matter. Get better.
You got it. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you taking the time. If people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
At Torisk Team is my wife's really like the email, Jeremy Torisk at Gmail, labortoleadership.com. Really, I'm just kind of trying to find that whole secret sauce to one place, and that's with your help in the Noodleberg Morning Huddle. We're going to get there very soon.
Awesome. Excited about it. If you have any questions, if you want to connect with Jeremy, please do. He's on LinkedIn. He's on all the social channels, because I see him there all the time. He's a great content creator. And Jeremy, thank you again.
Thank you for supporting us.